Alrighty, can you guys hear me all right? Yes, okay, if you can't, please let me know at any point during the conversation. The worst thing we can do is give you nuggets of wisdom and you not be able to retrieve them. I know there are, I think, monitors giving the written words of this, but feel free to let us know if you have any trouble hearing. So as you guys can see from the screen, my name is Mandela Schumacher-Hodge. I'm the founding Portfolio Services Director at Kapor Capital. We are a venture capital firm based in Oakland, California. We do seed stage tech startup investments, all focusing on closing gaps of access, opportunity, and outcome for low-income communities of color in the United States. Earlier this year at Kapor Capital, we did something really big. I don't know if you guys heard about it, but it's called the Founders Commitment. It's the first ever VC-backed diversity pledge where in order to receive capital from our firm, every single founder and company has to pledge to build a diverse team and inclusive workplace. They have to set goals, they have to attend our workshops, and they all have to make progress towards that end. I have 4 of our Kapor Capital company representatives, some of them founders, some of them diversity inclusion leaders, who I've asked to join me on stage today to keep it 100% honest with you guys about what the experience really is like when it comes to baking D&I into the DNA of a very early stage company. Now, before we begin, and I let them do their introductions, I want to ask you guys 2 things. First question. By a show of hands, how many of you in here are founders of companies or organizations? Raise them high in the sky, we get a sense, okay. Maybe about 5 to 10, all right. By a show of hands, how many of you in here are investors? Do we have any investors in the room? Great, so maybe what we're doing, you can try to replicate. Thank you for being here. Any tech employees? Anybody here work at tech companies? Okay, yep, all right. This may apply to any of the groups I just asked about. Are there any diversity advocates? What I mean by that is people who work at tech companies who are either on a volunteer, part-time, or full-time basis trying to make their companies diverse and inclusive. Do we have any? Great, that's what we expected. Awesome, your friends, they're all friendly. Second question I have is how many of you, by a show of hands, have a smartphone? Do you have any smartphone owners in here? Great, that's what I expected. Please note that this panel is tweetable. That means if they are giving you nuggets of wisdom, you see their Twitter handles, it's really important that you expand this conversation beyond these 4 walls. Not everybody could come out here to San Francisco today. Not everyone could afford the ticket. But what you can do is give them access to this information by sharing what you're learning on the good old internet. All right. Enough about me and Kapor Capital and you guys. Let's bring it over to the panelists. There are 2 mics you guys are going to have to share, and I'm going to let you introduce yourselves. As I asked you backstage, if you can please give context to kind of the size of your companies, because I think it's important to realize where you're at in your entrepreneurial journey that you're trying to do this type of work. So you want to start, Lynzi?
Great. Hi. I'm Lynzi Ziegenhagen. I'm the founder, CEO of Schoolzilla. We are an education technology company and a public benefit corporation. We have about 60 people, 3.5 years old. We're serving 1 million students in more than 100 public school systems. And I am actually perfectly healthy. I just have this condition where my hair falls out. And then some days it looks like that. So just in case you were worried about me, I appreciate it.
I'm Sonja. I lead diversity and inclusion at Asana. Asana has 3 offices, New York, Dublin, and our headquarters in San Francisco. It's a work tracking tool that allows teams and people to collaborate and work better together. And by using the tool, people can be accountable, can be transparent, and you can essentially see who's doing what by when.
Hey guys, my name is Perez. I am with HealthSherpa, and we essentially help folks enroll in marketplace health insurance, Obamacare, ACA, folks of lower income, and we've essentially enrolled over 500,000 to date. We've been around for 3 years. It's about 4% of the marketplace last year, so awesome success there. Our company size is about 35 or so.
Hey all, I'm Bhavin, Parikh, founder and CEO of Magoosh. we help students prepare for standardized tests like the GRE, the GMAT, the SAT, and more, trying to make education more accessible and effective. Right now we serve about 10% of students taking the GRE and GMAT as paying customers of ours. Hopefully we can reach many, many more students. And we're about 25 folks, so about the same size as HealthSherpa.
Awesome, great. So what I tried to do, as you can see, was get some phenomenal representatives from their companies who can come and speak to you from the heart. It's a variety of ed tech, as you can see, health tech, also task management tools that we love to use personally at Kapor Capital. But the first question I have before we get into the hows of diversity inclusion is really just making sure we're on the same page with what diversity inclusion is. So I'm going to throw this over to Sonja, who prior to working at Asana, you did this work at Facebook, is that right? Diversity inclusion work at Facebook. So can you just ground for us, what is diversity and inclusion and how are they different?
Okay. So when you think of diversity as recognizing that we're all unique, we all have differences that make us who we are. Some of them might be visible differences, race, where I'm from, my accent. But some of them are things that you have no idea about, my socioeconomic status, my religion, my gender identity, my sexual orientation. Diversity encompasses all of those things that make me who I am. Some of them, as I mentioned, might be visible like disabilities, and some might be invisible like disabilities. So it's recognizing that we all have those differences. Inclusion is recognizing that we have all those differences. How do we work together? How do we allow everyone to be their selves, their full selves, in an environment where they feel welcomed and where they feel heard? So think of diversity as the step that leads to the actual action of inclusion.
All right, great. So everyone's on the same page. Awesome. Next question is really around the why. Why is it important to you, either as a founder, a D&I leader, whatever your role is at your company, to bake D&I in early? So Kat or Bhavin, do you guys have an answer for why are you even doing this work?
Yeah, we want to create an environment that's safe and inclusive for all of our employees. From a business standpoint, we want to retain people. We want to have people who feel like they can bring their best selves to work every day and feel like they can be comfortable in who they are. We've been really fortunate, have had full-time employees for about 6 years, have had very little turnover, about 1 employee a year on average or less. And we know we have a long way to go, but that's one of the core reasons. I'd say the second reason around why is we want to better serve our students. We have students from over 180 countries, from all across the US, and we want a team that's representative of our students so that we can make the best impact possible.
Awesome. Anyone else want to elaborate on your why?
Yeah, for us at HealthSherpa, I mean, by nature of who we're serving at the end of the day, it's a lot of folks who are of lower income. And, you know, as of this year, 27 million folks still remain uninsured. And Hispanic, Latinx, and Black and African American folks are at a disadvantage and a high risk of being uninsured. So it's our job to make sure that we're authentically connecting and reaching those communities.
Great, great.
Yeah. So Schoolzilla, the thing we do is we provide tools that enable people in schools to use data to run great schools for students. And part of our mission that's in our bylaws is focusing also specifically on underserved students in underserved communities. And so we have dashboards that actually show the opportunity gap in schools to teachers and principals and superintendents. And like to do that, if the team building and designing those products is not diverse and doesn't bring a wide set of school experiences, is like not going to get a good product and not going to resonate. And we also need to make sure that our customers know how to have productive conversations around those topics. So there's both very practical like product and service implications for our organization. And then I think when you do this type of work, you attract people who care about it, and they make they then help hold me accountable as the CEO and and not just hold our products better. And then I think if the tragedies this year and the election have not made it obvious that the world needs this, I think that's another reason that drives me.
Awesome. And so I think, just speaking on behalf of Kapor Capital and all of our companies, we're an investment firm, right? We firmly believe in a double bottom line, but at the end of the day, we firmly believe that D&I is a business imperative, that there are business advantages, especially with our companies. We're focusing on the end user being served, being low income, our communities of color in the United States, that the more these businesses can reflect that customer base, understand them, build better products and solutions for them, is a huge reason why we do this. Another huge reason is just it's not a level playing field, right? There's a fairness aspect in what we firmly believe, and we're trying to help our own companies make progress towards this. All right, so this is some of the hard part. What do you do first? There's many things to building a diverse team, an inclusive workplace. If any of you out there are already on that journey, there's a buttload of things to do. So how do you prioritize that? I want to throw this to Sonja. What do you do the very, very first thing?
So the first thing that you probably do is wonder what you've gotten yourself into. And then you step back and you assess the landscape. You really assess where you're at as a company and what you're trying to achieve. And if, as the fellow panelists have said here, your product is trying to impact everyone, people across the world, you have to have people within your company who look like the people that you're building a product for. Your back end has to reflect the front end. So that's the first thing. After you do that, you start thinking about what's the kind of culture that I want to build in my company. So for us, we really sat and we said, what are we trying to build here? For us, we're trying to build a workplace that is radically inclusive. That sounds really nice, but what does that look like in reality? Well, we want to create a place where people can be themselves, where we can have conversations that are often uncomfortable or not necessarily held in the workplace. So we want to create a space where we equip our employees with the tools to have those conversations. And as we're building that culture, how are we recruiting? How are we thinking about that recruiting aspect? Because we're trying to build a product and run a company, right? We're not doing this as a charity. So how are we sourcing? Are we sourcing just from referrals? Are we sourcing beyond referrals? Are we, even if we're using referrals, are we going beyond that first connection and going into our second and third connections and finding the right people? How are we thinking about job descriptions? Are we just tapping the people that we know because we want to move quickly? Or are we stopping and thinking about the impact on the company we're building and the culture we're building and creating processes from the start that are going to impact on this? It's a lot of work to start at the beginning, but you have to do it because you're going to end up with a lot of work to do at the end. It's not something you can put off as you say, well, I'm just focused on my product. You have to be thinking about this at the same time. And then the third piece is about thriving. How are you creating that kind of culture that allows people to feel really comfortable? It's connected to that culture you're building. But when I've brought in these people who come from diverse backgrounds, how do they feel actually comfortable to be themselves? You've sold them on this, and you've sold them that we're a company that has this sort of culture. But there's going to be a time when killings happen, and people feel hurt, and they're not sure if they can talk about this or feel comfortable talking about this in the office. That's when you have to test it. Test what you actually built, and you hope that you created a culture where people feel as though they can have those conversations and know that it's okay because it's a part. I can be exactly who I am outside of the company as I am inside the company. I'm going to stop because
you're doing great. No, it's all good. I see people nodding. No, I think it was great, and I actually want to drive home a point and maybe ask if the other panelists agree. One thing I heard was that kind of first you need to do a self-assessment and kind of see, like, I got a problem here, right? I know it's going to be overwhelming, but you said address it. You have a problem. But you talked about making sure you have certain aspects of the culture right before you even focus on recruiting to bring more diverse people in. I think oftentimes when companies first try to do this work, they immediately think, okay, I need to get some diversity in my sourcing pool, and then in my pipeline, and then into actually these seats in the cubicles, right? And that's what they're focused on. And they're not necessarily focused on the environment in which you're bringing these people from diverse backgrounds, different lived experiences. So I just really appreciate you calling that out, that needs to be done first. Because what kind of environment are you bringing these people into? More than likely, they can be unhappy when they get there, or there's going to be churn, attrition, okay? A next question I have is about money, right? I purposely, intentionally tried to grab some of our smaller companies in our portfolio to kind of show you that you can think about this early. You can do this on a budget. And I want to call out anyone on the panel who's willing to answer the question, do you have to have a lot of money in the bank to do this work? Anyway.
Kat just asked me if I wanted to answer. So, okay. No, I don't think you need a lot of money. For us, just going back quickly to the first thing was realizing we don't know what we're doing, to having that awkward conversation within our company, and then emailing Frida Kapor of Kapor Capital saying, help. And just having resources to talk to, that doesn't necessarily cost money. After this panel, you'll have people up here who you can meet, Sonja specifically, who's been doing this work for a while, who you will then be able to reach out to and talk to and figure out, how do I approach this within my company? It's not something that necessarily costs money. It just requires some thought, some time, and some energy, and you want to be intentional about that. So yes, you can do it on a budget. It does take time, but we all believe that spending time early on diversity and inclusion will lead to more success in your business. And so if you want to make your business successful, you should spend time on diversity and inclusion.
Yeah, I would add I agree, and I think if you start with setting your values, we used this book called The Advantage from Lynzi, who also wrote The 5 Dysfunctions of Teams, to set values. That was really helpful and free. And then I think secondly, if you, just like with a software product, if you want to make a change once the product is in the market, it is so much more timely and expensive and difficult. And if you do it when it's on paper or in, a design tool, it's much easier and cheaper. Like, I really encourage anyone who's starting an organization or in a very small, like even 5 people organization, like, do it now. It's so much easier to start and build the right culture from the beginning and then try to tag it on later. It's still worthwhile doing it any stage, but like, don't lose the opportunity.
Yeah, one thing I would love to just add, so yes, I absolutely agree. I just want to give Bhavin an opportunity to chat in the rotation, but one thing that didn't cost us anything is, as leadership, if you are, advocates for these initiatives, organically you will start to see champions kind of come to the surface in your hiring team or in your management team, and it really gives them a platform to do this work and hire diverse talent. We've seen that happen at HealthSherpa, and it's one of the most rewarding parts of this process for us.
Got it. So it sounds like if you create a dialogue and a space for people to step up into these roles, you'd be surprised at how many people internally you've already invested in, right, with their salaries that you can leverage to this end. Great. So another main question we get all the time, pushback, is I'm not hiring, right? I know, Sonja, you said that you guys focus a lot on recruiting, so maybe Asana's hiring. But a lot of companies are not hiring at certain points, right? It can be seasonal. It can be dependent on funding and capital. So what do you say to people who are like, I can't do this right now because I'm not even hiring?
You're not hiring, but you are certainly, that allows you more time to think about your processes, because you're not working against a time issue. So at this point, you can be able to think, you're able to think about, how are we going to interview? How are we training people who are in leadership roles who will have teams that might be diverse? How are we setting up employees for success? How are we recognizing career development? That is actually the time where you have no excuse, because now you can do all the other work that you should be doing. You have a little more room to think about how, when I am hiring, how am I going to be thinking about sourcing? How am I developing relationships with networks that can connect me to underrepresented groups, so that when I am hiring, I am not coming in an inauthentic way, because I've already built a relationship with them, and they know what I'm about, and they want to be a part of my company.
Mm-hmm. Great. I would second that completely. My next question, and I'm looking at the time here, so we're moving quickly because we're running out. And we will get to questions, so if you have them, if there's nothing I ask up here that you want, I'll get to that. Around the mistakes, okay? I want you, I set up this panel to be authentic and to really share some of the bumps in this process. So, Kat, I'd love to start with you in terms of any mistakes, if there's one specific example that you can give us, because, it is a process and it's not necessarily the easiest thing. And I think it's important to warn people kind of what the journey is, but then we're going to equip you to kind of overcome those mistakes.
Ooh, yeah, we certainly had mistakes. So I think, Sonja, you really touched on a really important piece that we failed to do. Like, one of the first things you need to do is evaluate where your team is at in terms of a diverse and inclusive culture. We made the mistake of assuming everybody was absolutely like gung-ho for this initiative within our company, and we didn't have a conversation or a dialogue with the team before we started rolling out initiatives in the hiring process or, mitigating bias in that process. So that was our biggest mistake, just shying away from the really hard and uncomfortable conversation that you're going to have about where your company stands on diversity and inclusion.
Got it. And Sonja, you seem so seasoned in this work. I'm sure you've never made a mistake, or have you?
I don't know what you're talking about. Mistakes. I guess it's remembering that everything is not solved in a day. So although you give people the tools, so one example I can share is we have done trainings around being an ally. And you've given people the tools to have those conversations. But when something happens where that has to be tested, people are still uncomfortable. So recognizing that this is a journey, that not everybody's going to be at the same place as much as you'd like them to be, or think that they might be because you've done this conversation in a really abstract way, making sure that you recognize where people are and meet them where they're at so that you can kind of pull them along. And I say pull them along because I mean take that action to pull them along, because that's how you kind of allow people to grow. So I think that would be probably one of the learning experiences.
Okay. And then I think I've heard from all three of you, and maybe you too, Lynzi, but this concept of being uncomfortable. How do you get over that discomfort? Do you take certain actions? Do you do certain mantras in the morning? I will have this conversation. And you look at yourself, like, what do you do?
There's some quote, if you Google uncomfortable diversity or something, that gets near the top. I can't remember, but it's like nothing good changes when you're comfortable, and that like realizing being uncomfortable is actually the thing that will create changes in people's mind and behavior. So I think it's more like, oh, it's a good thing. Like you call it out, just the way conflict can be uncomfortable. But if you call out like, yes, this is a healthy conflict, we need to get to the right answer. So I find that is helpful. And actually not having been comfortable being the goal. Like many of us walk around every day and don't get the option of being comfortable, right? And so kind of realizing that the people you care about in your company like are feeling uncomfortable a lot about various things like helps build empathy as well. So
anyone want to add anything about how do you get comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Yeah, talking about values, one of our core values is challenge is greater than comfort. And it's building that notion of whatever you're doing, the biggest growth and the biggest change comes from this idea of being uncomfortable, and making a culture where that's okay, and it's okay to make mistakes, and it's okay to feel really awkward and not really know what you're doing, because you know when you exit that process, you'll be in a better place. And that's really helped us and me personally when I'm avoiding an uncomfortable conversation. I mean, whether it's about diversity or even speaking on a panel, just saying challenge over comfort, this is something I need to do.
Got it. And again, can you raise your hand if you work at a tech company or you are a founder? I think there's a lot. Okay. In any point in your journey, did you feel like things were uncomfortable? Just being in a business, being in an early stage tech startup? Yes, right? Like this is so much a part of tech culture, right? Like lean startup methodology, fail fast, fail forward, iterate, test. But it's some reason when it comes to D&I, we just kind of throw that growth mindset out the window. We're like, I don't know how to do this. Like, figure it out, right? You have that ethos and that energy about so much else in your business. And I think if you guys can go back and articulate that to the powers that be, you already have this ability. You're just not applying it to this portion of your business, right? I think would really help push the conversation forward. Now, Bhavin, I want you to hold on to that mic because we're going to go down. This is where I want you guys to really brag, okay? Don't be shy. Don't be humble. I want you to share some of your biggest wins. Like, what have you actually figured out or gotten right? You can name one thing. You can name 5 things, but keep it short and sweet. But I want you to show people what's possible. So.
Sure. It's hard to brag about anything in this space because it's so uncomfortable. I'm just going to preface that this is extremely uncomfortable. I think 2 things that I'm proud of is one is in our hiring process. We use a very structured process, rubrics along the way. Everyone gets the same questions, same interviewers, same process. That's something that I've been very sort of proud of, and we've had other companies copy that or like seek guidance from us on that. And the second thing is our team was about a year and a half ago, 30% female with 1 woman in a leadership position. And through whatever changes we made, which is unclear to me which exactly the specific changes were, we're now 60% female and 40% leadership is female. So that's cool.
Awesome. Yeah, so I kind of touched on this slightly before, but for us, our biggest win has really been about giving other folks in hiring positions the platform to do this work. It actually we've grown as well since our very first D&I workshop. We've grown exponentially in Hispanic and Latinx by 2x, over 2x. And we've also grown in Black and African American as well. So we've surpassed our targets there. And I think a lot of that has to do with cultivating these champions internally who really want to do the work. Not just kind of taking it all on your own. It's very easy to do that in startup world. It's expected of you to do that in startup life, but just making sure that you have the proper support and you're cultivating the proper champions to make sure that we are hitting, we're hitting our goals and we have a diverse team. And we've seen very specific examples of success at HealthSherpa. Our support team is very diverse and it's amazing because they're connecting with these folks on the front lines. And I've literally encountered a commonality along the lines of Black Lives Matter. And that's amazing. That was a really proud moment for us. And then internally, as these things are happening in the world, violence, racism, all sorts of crazy things in the climate right now, making sure that we are there for each other. I know that can be a tricky thing when you're a startup and you don't have an HR department and you're not sure how that might make folks feel. But obviously making sure that you see them, you hear them, and you're there for them, and you understand that it's going to be a hard day because these things are happening.
For us, a couple of things. One of the things that I'm really happy that we've done is we've revised how we recruit from universities. We include HBCUs, we include schools with a high representation of underrepresented communities, and we include women colleges. Was not how we recruited before. We're getting out into the community, we're using new tools to connect with organizations and clubs at universities and colleges. We're trying to source differently and source actively and not depending on referrals. And that was because we had a really hard conversation with our recruiting team about how we recruit and the recruiting experience, and really getting them comfortable with this. So that was, time will tell, but that was great for us to get people there. Getting my co-founders ready and able and willing. They were committed to diversity and inclusion before I even got there, but getting them to talk and recognize that they have an actual role to play. One of my proudest moments internally was when Dustin Muscovitz, one of our co-founders, spoke about Black Lives Matter and what it meant to him. And that touched me both personally, but as the D&I head, because I said, he gets it. And completely moved me. But beyond talking about it, knowing that they are taking actions as co-founders and still learning, that's been great to see them do that. In terms of our inclusion, we've, over the last 10 months, built employee resource groups for 3 communities internally. More than 48% of our employees have joined this. It's employee run. I support it. It's employee run. So we created, our platform requires us to be really transparent and accountable. And we have conversations. People push. People are asking, what are you doing? Why aren't you here? What are you doing more of? And that's the kind of place we want. We want an environment where people want to be involved, but know what we're doing and are able to track where we're getting to or where we are. So that has been really great. And then the final piece is, because we've kind of built our strategy on data, we collected data across a spectrum of indicators of diversity. So we're trying to really go beyond just the typical ways that people report on their data. And I wasn't sure if people would want to participate in this because it's really new. You're sharing a spectrum: gender, race, religion, socioeconomic status, tons of things that you don't typically share. And we had more than 98% of our employees complete it. We're just about 240 employees. I did not expect so many people to complete it. So now we're able to track, to look at intersectionality. We hope to be able at some point to share some of this data. We're part of Project Include. And knowing that even some of the things that I've approached our co-founders with, I said I wanted to be a part of Project Include. And it was like, of course, we have to be, because we want to do this sort of work. So knowing that that kind of commitment from the top, and we're small enough that the commitment from the top translates into the commitment at mid-level and translates to the commitment from the bottom, knowing that it kind of permeates has been fantastic.
And before, is my mic on? Hello? Can you guys hear me? Maybe I'm just weird. Okay, real quick before you go, I just want to let you know we're going to start questions soon. So if you have any, raise your hand, and maybe there's a moderator walking around in the back for questions. Okay, and no, take your time. Go ahead.
All right, so I have 2 structural things that we've done that I feel like have been helpful, and one.
Take your time.
The first is we've created a salary leveling system designed to eliminate inequities that typically come from negotiation and kind of self-advocacy skills that some people have more than others. I'm proud of that. I feel good. I feel good that there aren't. Well, I feel good about that. The second one is we did put a Rooney Rule in place in February of last year.
That is.
Yeah, the woman before, I don't know who was here, but she talked about it as well. But it's basically requiring that during the interview process that you interview, in our case, at least one person from an underrepresented racial ethnic group in tech and one woman for all technical positions. And it just results in you diversifying your pipeline and being like, how do I make sure I have great candidates? I might need to do something different. And so it triggers all these other behaviors that are really good about helping diversify the pipeline. And then we have someone on our team that was trained by the National Equity Project, and she runs internal equity sessions at our Learn It lunches. And I'm really proud of seeing people that have never thought about this in their lives. It's have kind of an awakening and awareness and start to realize they can be part of making the world better. And I have to think that spills over not just into their work, but also into their personal lives and their communities.
Oh, awesome, you're done. I know there's so many things we could get to with all of you, but I hope that you grasp that, there's many different things you can start doing. I think the first thing is, number one, doing a self-assessment, not just for yourself, but for the entire company. And you heard about structured interviews. You heard about distributing the power to other employees to really step up into these roles. You heard about a comprehensive plan, right? At all different levels of the company. You heard about things like the Rooney Rule. Hopefully you guys have got some ideas going, and we're going to turn it over to some questions. So whoever's most excited, go first. You want to start over there? Go ahead.
Hello. I'm someone that's very uncomfortable, and I'm getting there to where I'm comfortable. So my question is, how do you get current employees hyped about diversity and inclusion? Sonja, you mentioned, like pulling them in, but can you elaborate how you would do that?
Yeah. Well, there are a number of different ways. People are interested in diversity and inclusion for different reasons. Some, as Mandela touched upon, for some it's a business imperative. For some it's about fairness. So it's about understanding what your employees or your teams are interested in, because there are many different ways to come to diversity and inclusion. Ultimately, if it's something that a company is committed to, it's akin to a value. And if a company says this is something that we value, people either decide that this is something they want to be a part of or they don't. But you have all of these different tools, and there's a huge body of research which supports all of these different reasons that you can show. Here are the actual specific financial returns that happens when you have diverse and inclusive teams. So you have all of these tools that you can use and share with them. But for some, it's easier to do than others, so it's also recognizing that not everybody's going to get there at the same speed.
Got it. So meeting people where they are, and also you said recognizing that there's research and best practices that have been used and tried and proven that you can leverage. Thank you. Yeah?
Hi, my name is Eva. I'm so appreciating this panel, especially your bravery in talking about what you personally have failed at or at the company and what you've learned from that. So my question kind of relates to that. I'm wondering, what motivated you to start measuring the goals that you were going for? And also, what has or would motivate you, especially as executives, to share that out? Because that does take a lot of bravery. No one is perfect. Probably most of us are not at the point where our companies are maybe as advanced as some of yours. So I'm just curious about kind of the motivation and the right moments that you found.
Yeah, so the motivation for me personally is, I am a queer woman of color. I'm half Puerto Rican, half Korean. I come from a very large Hispanic, loud family, amazing folks. So I do have a personal motivation to do this work. And then, internally, like, Kapor is amazing. They are such great resources for us. The founder's commitment is obviously very much needed. So for us, that is motivation enough. And I spoke to the folks that we serve through our products. A lot of them are lower income, and there are specific folks of color who just are at risk for not being insured. So it's our job to do this work. We would be doing a disservice to our company and to just folks in general because of the need for health insurance if we didn't do this work. So that's essentially the motivation for us and for me personally.
I also think actually on the other side, we all who do this work know, it's never good enough. I'm not happy with where things are, right? And so it's awesome. And you also, I'm very sensitive to hypocrisy in this area. And so speaking about this publicly or sharing stats, I do worry about someone thinking they think they figured it out and I just want to do the work. And so I think there is a weird dynamic on that side that I don't know how to change.
And quickly jumping in on what would motivate at least me to share publicly, I think it's first getting really comfortable with our team knowing that we're talking about this, because in order to create an inclusive culture, I wouldn't want someone at my company to feel like, wow, the way in which he's talking about Magoosh is not the way I feel like Magoosh actually is. And that's probably my biggest fear, and which is why I really don't like talking about this publicly until I feel like internally we're all sort of on the same page.
Next question.
Hi, I actually have a startup dealing in work culture. So my question's more, how do you get founders talking about culture early when a lot of the focus in startups tends to be on products and customers rather than on who's building those products for your customer?
So the question was, how do you get startup founders to focus on this early, especially when so much of the focus at the very early stages around product and traction, et cetera? Is that accurate? So all three of these individuals up here are founders themselves, and then we have one diversity and inclusion leader. And I think Asana is the most mature company out of all the ones up here. So I don't know who feels comfortable answering. How do you get founders such as yourself to care about this early?
I feel like the one, I think founder CEO to founder CEO saying like, oh, we did this step at this stage, and really it wasn't that hard. You can do it. Like that has both, like I've been successful saying that to other CEO founders. So I think it kind of, you need a peer almost, I don't know, to like believe that like I really can do this, and it's so important when I'm worrying about the survival of my company to put this on the list.
Yeah, I'd say the founder peer groups and talking to people who've said they've done it and it hasn't been that hard, but also talking to people who haven't focused on culture of any kind and seeing the challenges they face, that shows you the path that you might not want to take. And that's incredibly valuable because you can learn from others' missteps.
Yeah. And I think we're wrapping up. So again, I just want to say a few last things. You know, at Kapor Capital, we're an investment firm. We have a portfolio that we do workshops for and we provide resources. But if you are interested in kind of accessing that information or learning from our best practices, you can reach out to me on Twitter or just Mandela at kaporcapital.com, because it is important for you guys to be able to leverage the early lessons from the people who are kind of on the ground doing this. Other resources is diversity advocates. You can go to bit.ly/diversity advocates. It's a group that my boss, Dr. Frida Kapor Klein, who's really pioneering this work and providing a lot of the guidance for our companies, started 2 years ago. It's kind of the largest, I think, community of diversity advocates at tech companies. I'm talking about Google and Apple and Asana and all the people you see up here around the country are in that group, and they are literally every day sharing advice, sharing horror stories, getting support, and so that is a great resource for you. I don't know if anybody else have anything to share, but I'm getting kicked off. All right, can we give these founders and diversity leaders a huge round of applause? How awesome for their bravery. Great job.
Thank you, Mandela, Sonja, Kat, Lynzi, Bhavin. Thank you so much for inspiring us. Thank you.